Okay, so today I intend to basically cover two topics. One is the three bodies and three states of experience. But as usual, before we start, let's start with a prayer. Om Asato Ma Satgamaya
Amaya,
Tamaso
Tamaso
Ma Jyotirgamaya
Jyotirgamaya, Mrityorma Amrutam Gamaya.
Om
Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
Lead us from unreal to the real. Lead us from darkness to light. Lead us from death to immortality. Om, peace, peace, peace. A few people waiting. Let me admit them. Okay. So as usual, we'll start from the recap. Today, I didn't want to ask any of you to do it because there's a lot of things to cover. So I thought I'll do a quick one and go from there.
Thank you.
Why Vedanta? We said it asks a lot of good questions. We want answers. We keep getting those same questions. So let's learn that. We said the way to learn the scriptures is three steps: Shravanam, Mananam, and Nididhyasanam. Shravanam is memorizing or hearing from hearing, reading, whatever it is. And then Mananam is asking all the questions, clarifying your doubts, and Nididhyasanam is actually meditating on it, thinking about it, and realizing it. Then we said humans have goals. There are four goals: Artha, Kama, Dharma, and Moksha. Artha, Kama, Dharma is what we normally pursue. It's called prayers. Moksha is freedom from dependence on external things for your happiness. And that is called Shreyas, and that's what we want to pursue. And how do we pursue that? We said there are three paths: Karma Yoga, Upasana Yoga, and Jnana Yoga. Karma Yoga is the way of purifying your mind, which means you are doing the right things with the right attitude. And Upasana Yoga is focusing the mind, which is essentially through practices which take care of your health, your senses, your speech, and your mental status through meditation. And then we said, once we have a focused mind, we can gain knowledge, and knowledge is the only one that removes ignorance. And this is the Advaita philosophy by Adi Shankara. Of course, there are other philosophies which says any path will take you there, and so on and so on, right? In the last class, we talked about bhakti. So I thought I'll quickly summarize what we learned in the last session. Bhakti, from a point of view of love, we said there could be love for the means, love for the end, or love for self. Love for the means is called Manda Bhakti, which is the lowest form of Bhakti. Love for the end is the Madhyama Bhakti, where we end is God and we want that to be ourselves. And Uttama Bhakti is the self-love. The next one we said is spiritual discipline, sadhana drishtya, which is karma rupa, upasana rupa, and jnana rupa. And that's what we are learning as we go along. And then devata drishtya, we said three types of God definition. We talked about Ekarupa, which is a God of one form, which is a typical God when we think of, which is Krishna or Rama or whatever. Aneka Rupa, where we say the whole universe is nothing but God, everything is God. And finally we say Arupa. Arupa is there is no Rupa, there is just Nirguna Brahma, and that is the understanding of God that we have. And we saw that Bhakti Yoga, in some philosophies, they say, oh, you can use Bhakti Yoga to attain the Lord. But in Adi Shankara's perspective, Bhakti Yoga is intertwined with everything that we do, whether it is Karma Yoga, Upasana Yoga, Jnana Yoga. You need that devotion to go along with it. And when we talked about it, I said Adi Shankara has written a number of devotional songs. I did make a mistake. Lalita Sahasranamam is not by Adi Shankara, but Saundarya Lahari, Bhajagovindam, and many more are written by Adi Shankara. Then we talked about qualifications for Jnana Yoga, and qualifications is the 4 Ds, if you remember. Anybody remembers what the 4 Ds are? Discrimination, which is Viveka, which is how can I differentiate between permanent and impermanent things? When you're seeking for...
Can I try?
Yeah, sure.
Discrimination, dispassion, discipline, and desire.
Exactly. Very good. So discrimination is when you're seeking permanent happiness, we know that we cannot derive it from impermanent things. Therefore, we should have that ability to discriminate what is permanent and what is impermanent. And the process of learning is that Brahman is the only permanent thing in time and space, and therefore that automatically makes you search for Brahman. Dispassion is our ability to control our sensory pleasures, whether it be ethical and moral or unethical and immoral. And then we talked about the 6 disciplines, Shataka Sampatti, which we talked about, and we'll go a little bit deeper into that. And then desire, the intense desire to reach moksha, and that's what drives us to learning these things, right? In the 6 disciplines, we talked about mind control, sense control, capacity to withdraw, titiksha, which is forbearance, shraddha, and samadha. Shraddha being faith in terms of knowing that scriptures have the answers. It's just that we have to make the effort to understand it and make sure that we get it. And concentration is required for you to get that. So when we talked about this last class, I think Pam at the end of the session asked if I could spend a few more minutes on Titiksha. So I thought about it a little bit, and I said, okay, let me do that. So here it is. Titiksha, we talked about it in terms of 2 arrows, right? We said events that happen to us is outside our control. That is something like the first arrow, which hits us. But our ability to, how do we react to it is the second arrow, right? And most often, the second arrow causes us a lot more trouble than the first arrow. And I'm not talking about big disastrous events, even simple things like, you're expecting somebody to say hello to you, they saw you on the street, they just walked past you, and for the next 1 hour, you're thinking about why did that person do this? There's a reaction in you. The first arrow was that that person ignored you. The second arrow is this boiling within you as to why it happened. Is he insulting me? Whatever, right? So that's your second arrow. So how do we endure that forbearance? So the important distinction here is it's not suffering, right? It's not like, okay, I feel the pain, but I will not express it and just suppress it. That's not what we're talking about. It is an attitudinal shift for you to see that as something that doesn't affect you, right? That's the most important part. It's not that, oh, I hit the first arrow, I do feel the second arrow, but I will not express it. That's not titiksha. Titiksha is your ability to shift your attitude so that you don't really feel the pain. And the important thing here is that we are, if you look at ourselves, what was agreeable to us yesterday could be disagreeable tomorrow. What was disagreeable today could be agreeable tomorrow. It's again very, very subjective, right? It's not objective what we label as agreeable and disagreeable. And many times once we peel a few layers, we feel we shouldn't have felt that way. It's not as disagreeable as we thought about it. Many instances, we can give many examples. There was one recently in CNN, they reported how this guy who was hating Muslims tweeted to one of the Muslim representatives of the state government very, very, very harshly. And this guy actually made an effort to reach out to him, found out what his problem was, helped him. then he really changed. His whole perspective towards people changed. So we have to understand that it's agreeable. What is beautiful to you may be ugly to someone else. What is ugly to you may be beautiful to someone else. So these are all attitudinal things that we need to learn. Equanimity, we talked about it at length. We gave the example of Ram, how at one moment he was going to be the king, next moment he was going to go into the forest for 14 years, but he was equally okay with either of those outcomes. That's kind of equanimity that one has to have. We have to learn to accept the situation that cannot be changed. And there is a beautiful prayer, serenity prayer, which many of you may have heard, which I've given here, which is, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. Right? And if you look at it, it's a beautiful prayer. And if you think about it, it gives a different meanings. One of the things that you can take away from this is, one thing that you can change, which is very much in your control, is your reaction to things. So that's something that is totally in your control, and you should be able to change those things, right? And as we learn about Atma and we learn about Satyam and Mithya, it'll become obvious, or it'll hopefully become obvious, why these things should not disturb us. But when Pam asked me this question, I was, in a kind of, I started this whole Vedanta session with the objective of explaining the concepts in Vedanta, and I didn't want to, go into the area of giving advice, because I don't think I can. But at the same time, I thought, okay, this is a question she asked, and probably is in the mind of many people. So why don't I share at least how some of the things that came to me, which helped me in thinking about it in a different way, or how it helped me in making a attitudinal shift. So I'll talk about that in two minutes.
Yeah,
First,
thank you, Shri, for for delving into this, and to go into. You didn't start with that, but I think along the way you have kind of become a guru, you know. So,
okay.
yeah,
Okay,
thanks,
so
thanks.
okay, let me talk about this. So the first thing is, I went to Pilani to study, and most of you know that. And when I went there, for the first time, I saw the sky. So it was so beautiful. It had like stars all over it, and you get really pulled into that, especially in a summer night. And there is a power failure. There is no street lights. There's nothing, and you see this beautiful sky in front of you. And then you start getting interested in it, and you see, then you learn, oh, you are in the Milky Way. Milky Way is somewhat like this galaxy that you see, and we are somewhere in this place here. And you realize that Milky Way is about 52,850 light years long, which means if I shine a torch from here, for it to reach here, it's going to take 52,850 years, right? And in the Milky Way, there are about 100 to 250 billion stars. And in a normal galaxy, there could be up to 400 billion stars. And then you talk about galaxies, it says there are estimated to be anywhere between 100 to 200 billion galaxies in the universe. Okay, so you can imagine the number of stars, and the star that we know most is the sun, and that looks so huge. So there are just huge amount of galaxies and stars. So then you think about what is a billion, right? And it's a very good thing if you look at it from if I were to count up to a billion, and assume it takes 1 second for me to count one number, it will take you that much, because if you're going to 525,325,450, that will take you 1 second, right? Or more. So on an average, you're taking 1 second, it'll take you 32 years to count up to 1 billion. Okay. 32 years, incidentally, happens to be the age that Shankara lived for. And imagine how much he has done in that 32 years. And all you're doing is just counting. And that is just 1 billion. Okay, so that's kind of gives you a perspective of where we are in this whole scheme of things. Okay, the second thing is this interest also led me to another book, and there's a very popular series which you may have seen by Carl Sagan called Cosmos, right? This book came out in the 1980s sometime, and I read this book. And in this book, he has something called the cosmic calendar. The cosmic calendar is basically the whole universe came into existence approximately 13.8 billion years ago. And so he shrinks this 13.8 billion into 1 year. So that means the 1st of January, 12 in the morning, that is midnight of 31st, the Big Bang happens. And today is 31st December midnight, right? So that's the cosmic calendar. So this is how the cosmic calendar looks. So January is when the Big Bang happened. The Milky Way didn't come into existence till May, right? And the solar system came into existence sometime in late September. And then if you look at December, the whole month of December, it's around 22nd that amphibians came. On 31st morning is when apes came, right? And human beings came around 9:25 p.m. Okay, in the night of 31st December. We are at 12 today. So the whole of human migration happened between 11:56 and 11:59, which means the last 1 minute, we are not even, the history is not even written in that one minute, right? The actual writing starts about 20 seconds, 10 seconds, 15 seconds ago. And America was discovered about 1.2 seconds ago, and we are here. So you can imagine the scale of this, right? In this scale, our life is like 0.23 cosmic seconds. That's about it. If you live 100 years. So all of us have kind of lived 0.1 second. So these are two perspectives that kind of, any problem that you have, and I think if you print this calendar and put it on the wall, every time you feel frustrated about something, come and take a look at this. I think it'll help you to get Titiksha.
This is amazing. Sweet.
Right? So I just thought I will share these two experiences with you. With that, let's go into what is self-knowledge. Okay. So we started with Atma Satyam Tadanya Sarvam Mithya, right? Which is Atma is Satyam, everything else is Mithya. That's what we started with. And then we said we're going to define what is Atma, what is Mithya, what is Satyam, right? And then we said Atma is that invisible, immortal inner essence that exists within every being. And then we talked about the wooden table. We said wooden table looks solid, it's got weight, it's able to keep my computer, I can sit on it, etc., etc. But if you really inquire into it, then you realize that the table is not a substance. The substance is actually wood, right? And if I take away the wood from the table, there's nothing left in it. Therefore, any wooden furniture, any piece of wooden article is nothing without the wood. So we said everything that we see is nama rupa, and what is the substance is actually the wood. And that is the distinction between satyam, which is independent existence, and mithya, which is something which cannot exist without the substance. So and a lot of people, when they talk about Advaita, they say, oh, Advaita says the world is false, it's an illusion. But actually what it says is the world is mithya. Mithya meaning it has a dependent existence. And the dependence of its existence is on Atma. So that's really what it says. It is not denying the existence of universe. Obviously, we all experience the universe. So it exists, but its existence is dependent on the Atma, the experiencer. If there is no experiencer, there is no substance, and therefore there is no name and form. So that is the understanding that we need to come to. And we said it is beyond the pramanams. That means all the senses, the knowledge instruments that we have is beyond that. We need to use Shastra Pramanam, which is the Vedas, to understand it. And one way of knowing it is like the Arundhati Nyaya. We said that how do you show the star to somebody? You show something that is known to them, and then from there you show what is unknown. And we said what is most known to us is our body. So let's start from there, right? So that's really what we are saying. When you ask who am I, my usual understanding is this body, this mind, this intellect. So let's start with the body. So that's the first thing we're going to talk about, which is Shariratrayam. Shariratrayam is 3 bodies. First one is gross body, and we'll go into what each one of them is. Second is the subtle body, and third is the causal body. First is called Stula Shariram, Sukshma Shariram, and Karana Shariram. Stula Shariram is gross body, which is your physical body. And physical body is made out of gross material. What is gross material? The ancient Vedantics basically said there are 5, the Pancha Bhutani, which is space, air, fire, water, and earth, right? So that's basically what they said. Just 1 minute, I think somebody is. Okay, so everything in our body is made out of this, right? So if you look at it, earth is all your metals. When you go to a doctor, there's iron deficiency, magnesium deficiency. That's earth. That's all we have in the body. Lot of liquids. They keep saying, a huge percentage of your body is nothing but water. Fire, the temperature that you feel all the time, the air that we breathe, and a lot of space, right? That is there in your body. So this is what our body is made up of. That's the gross body, right? That's the physical body that we have. The components of this body is your trunk, the head, the hands, the legs. This is what we say. What is the function of the body? According to Vedanta, the function of the body is like a house for lease. Our body is a house for lease. The Atma comes and enlivens it, and you live. The body moves around, and then once you die, the body just dies, right? So any lease has a rent, and the rent you pay is karma, which is what Manu nicely termed as the brownie points that you get, right? Spiritual brownie points. And it's visible to you and me, so you can see my body, I can see your body. So it's very physical. It is limited in duration, typically, anywhere between 100 years, maybe some people 120, that's the max, right? So that's kind of what the duration of Stula Shariram is. The nature of Stula Shariram is that it changes, right? If you think back, when you were in school, when you were a 10-year-old, you were seeing through the 10-year-old's eyes. The same person today, goes to college, 25, 30, you get your kids, and you're 50, and you are still inside that same body. But the body is constantly changing. And what I discovered when studying Vedanta is they're very good at making lists. Everything has 5, 6, 4, 3, 15. So they said there are 6 stages in which your body changes. First is called Asti, which is in the womb. Then Jayate, which is birth. And then Vardate, which you're growing. Then Viparinamate, which is the modifying, which is you kind of attain a plateau, around 20, and then you're remaining the same, slightly modifying. And then you start the Apakshate, which is aging or decaying. And then finally you're dying, right? So those are the six stages. So Stula Shariram is something that's constantly changing. So it's not permanent, it's changing. It's limited by duration. You go to any graveyard, you will find that from X to X. Before X, he didn't exist. After Y, he didn't exist. He or she, right? So like somebody said, life is nothing but a hyphen between 2 dates, right? So that's your physical body. Then we come to Sukshma Sharira. This is a little bit more sophisticated. It's called the subtle body. It's made out of subtle material. So they believe that every one of those gross material had a subtle form of it, and that's what your subtle body is made of. It has 19, or sometimes it's called 17, I'll tell you why. 19 components. And these are instruments of transaction, right? This is what you use to transact in the world. The 19 components are 5 sense organs of knowledge. These are the input devices. 5 organs of action, which is the output device. 5-fold energy functions. You have energy functions. Without energy, you cannot do anything. And 4 internal organs, which is your mind and intellect. And so we'll go through all of them in detail. So let's look at components, right? 5 senses of organs. It's called Jnana Indriyani, Pancha Jnana Indriyani, which is eyes, ears, skin, nose, and tongue, right? These are the 5 senses. 5 organs of action, Pancha Karma Indriyani, which is organ of speech, hands, legs, organs of excretion, and organs of procreation, right? These are all output organs. These are organs of action. Then you have 5-fold energy functions, which is called Pancha Prana, which is the respiratory system, which is prana, evacuating system, which is your excretion and so on, apana. Then you have your circulatory system, which is called vayana, and digestive system, which is samana, and the reversing or emergency system. This is basically when you have something, some poisonous thing, you throw up, or something goes into your nose, you sneeze. This is all the emergency system, which they refer to. So some of us who have learned, Gayatri, and we do the Jana, we say this prana is swaha, pana is swaha, vyana is swaha, samana is swaha, udana is swaha as part of the prayer. And that's really what it is. I never knew this till I read about it, but it's an interesting thing that we, on an everyday sense, we talk about all this, but we don't know about this. So these are the 5-fold energy functions, right? And then the 4 internal organs, which is mind, which is manaha, which is emotional and doubting faculty. This is what we generally call mind, and we keep changing our minds, right? So it's also changing. Intellect is buddhi, which is rational faculty. And then the 2, memory, which is chittam, and ego, which Lakshmi asked about in the last class, which is ahankara. Ego is a self-reference. That's how our concept of I is, right? Which is different from the concept of Atma. But we have a concept of I, which is a collection of our experiences, our body, everything put together we call I. That is ego. And sometimes the ego and memory is kind of clubbed into mind and intellect. That's why I said it's 17 or 19, right? So sometimes people say it's 17, sometimes they list out memory and ego, so it becomes 19. Now, the important thing here is when we say eyes, ears, skin, nose, tongue, what they're referring to is not the physical equipment, right? You may have a good ear, but you may not still be able to hear. So when they talk about organs of knowledge in the Sukshma Sarira, they're talking about the faculty of hearing, the faculty of seeing, right? The faculty of smelling. It's not the nose itself, right? So the nose itself is a gross body, is a Stula Sharira. Eyes itself is a Stula Sharira. Ears itself is a Stula Sharira. But the ability to see is what is called the Sukshma Sharira. So it's a very subtle thing, right? So that's what we need to remember. So the function, of course, is, as I said, it's meant for transaction. Anything that you do, anything that you think, it's all from here. This also undergoes change. All of us know that, sometimes like we have all these WhatsApp messages about low frequency, high frequency. After a certain age, you cannot hear it. Obviously, our hearing, has certain limitations. In fact, the interesting thing is when we talk about these, if we go a little deeper, there is a deity for each of these functions, right? And the way they think about it is the full range of frequency of hearing is to the deity, right? But we are all blessed with some shorter form of that, some smaller subset of that. So that subset may change as you grow older. Your brain may not be as active, your intellect may not be as sharp, or your eyesight may change, etc., etc. Right? So this is another changing thing. Now, how long does Sukshma Sharira live? And this is a very interesting question. We said the Stula Sharira lives about 100 years, 120 years. The Sukshma Sharira is supposed to be the one which goes from body to body. That means when you die, it's the Sukshma Sharira. That means the subtle body which goes out of you and enters another body. And that's the one that's carrying the vasanas that you have, right? The experiences that you've gone through, the karma you've accumulated goes with that into the other body. It actually vanishes during pralayam. Pralayam is in the concept of Hindu Vedanta. There is a Shrishti and a Pralayam. Shrishti is when the universe is created, or rather universe manifests itself and the universe goes back into nothing. But they're very, very, very clear about it that the conservation of matter is a principle that is held up in Vedanta. So there is nothing that is created. It is all existed in a seed form. It comes into manifest itself, and then it goes back into that singularity. That's the concept in Vedanta. So Vedanta says there's nothing that is created. And it's very consistent with science, which says there's nothing that's created. It's either energy becoming matter, matter becoming energy. There's just transformation that happens. So Sukshma Sharira actually lives until Pralayam. That means the concept of cyclical, what I showed you in that cosmic calendar, it's supposed to start from singularity into the whole universe, and then it goes back into singularity. This Sukshma Sharira, subtle body, is only visible to us, right, as to oneself. As an outsider, as a third person, you cannot see this body. As myself, I can feel it, right? And that's the difference between Sukshma Shariram and the Stula Shariram. The last one is called Karana Shariram, and this is a little bit more subtle than the subtle body. And this goes back to what I said, which is everything exists in its potential form before it manifests. So the universe existed as a singularity before the Big Bang. That's the science. But similarly, there is a seed form, a seed which contains the whole tree, right? The seed which grows into the tree had everything that manifests itself as a tree. It's a transformation. So that seed form is what is called the Karana Shariram. Now, when we talk about Karana Shariram, it is not individual bodies. I mean, you can't distinguish, right? So they basically become what we call Nirvikalpa Swarupa. That means indistinguishable Swarupa. We all go into one, and we are all there as potentials, but we cannot distinguish this is you and this is me because we are in one mass, right? And then that's called Karma Sharira. So there are three Sharirams to summarize: the gross body, which is Stula Shariram, what we generally associate with, which is this thing, which we see in the mirror, and it's constantly changing, and it's got a very limited life. Then you have subtle body, which is Sukshma Shariram, which is visible only to oneself. It's also changing, and it carries the vasanas, right? So when you die, it goes into the next body, and you become alive again through that. The Sukshma Shariram continues. The causal body is non-distinct. It is the seed form. It is all together. Okay, so I'm going to go into the next topic, which is three states of experience. If you want me to pause here for any questions, I can pause first. Or if you're okay, I will continue, and then we can have questions. Continue? Okay. Okay, so we're going to talk about Avasthatriyam. This is again a very interesting. We said known to unknown, right? So we are going to start with a known state and then talk about the unknown state. So Vedanta starts with something that all of us experience in our daily life, right? So let me start this session with a story. The story of Janak Maharaj, right? Janak Raja. Janak Raja was a very philosophical, very good king. Uh, so one day he was taking a nap in the afternoon, and he was sleeping when he suddenly heard this noise. Maharaj, Maharaj, utiye, utiye, get up, get up. So he woke up and he said, "What happened?" So this guy said, "There's a neighboring king who's invading us. So you need to, respond." So the king quickly calls his, defense minister, his other ministers, his army. He puts on his armor and he goes off to fight. A big battle ensues. There's like a huge battle, everybody fighting. And then finally, Janak Maharaj is defeated. He falls off his elephant. He falls to the ground. He's wounded. He's defeated. His crown is taken away. And the king basically arrests him and he says, "Listen, you're the king. I know you're a good king, but I've captured your kingdom, so I'm exiling you. I'm not going to kill you. I'm exiling you. Just get out of my country and go to the next kingdom." So the king is really depressed. He is hurt. He's tired. He's been fighting. He's wounded. He starts walking out of his country because they won't even give him any horse or anything to ride on. And he's walking. And as he walks, he's thirsty. He's hungry. None of his countrymen are allowed to feed him because the other king will, take revenge on these guys. So he has to walk. He walks for 2-3 days to cross his kingdom and go to the next kingdom. He's really famished. He then suddenly hears this announcement that in the next kingdom they are serving food for the poor. So he goes there, queues up. He goes. It's a long queue. By the time he reaches the person who's serving food, there's hardly any food left. There's the last ladle of food. Guy says, "Okay, this is what I have. I'll give it to you." He takes it, about to put it in his mouth when a kite flies by and he spills the food on the ground. Now this is his second arrow, right, which is really affecting him. He is so depressed. He feels, yesterday I was a king. I was lying down so coolly in my bed, and now I'm a pauper without even food. 2 days I'm hungry, and he starts crying. When he starts crying, there's a noise, "Maharaj, Maharaj," and he wakes up. He finds that he's actually in his palace, sitting on his bed, and the whole thing was a dream. So he suddenly says, "Is this true or is that true? Ye such or o such?" So the guy who came into hearing him cry came in was very puzzled. So he calls the minister. The minister comes. Janak is still asking him, "Ye such or o such?" So he comes back to his court and he keeps on repeating this, because he's a philosophical guy and he's wondering, is this the truth or is that the truth? Right? What is the truth? So that time there is this great sage called Ashtavakra Muni. He comes. Ashtavakra is another story. He's got 8 deformities in his body because uh, when he was in his mother's womb, his dad was chanting the Vedas and he learned the Vedas, but he found that his dad was making 8 mistakes. And from the womb, he tells his dad that, "Hey, you made 8 mistakes." Dad gets very angry and curses him, and that's why he's got 8 deformities in his body. That's the story, right? So he comes to Janak, to the kingdom, and he hears the story that the king was, from since afternoon, he's been repeating the same question. So he comes and meets the king, and he asks him, "You saw in the dream, you were poor, you were hurt, you were bleeding, you were hungry. Is any of it there with you now?" The king says, "No. I mean, nothing that I saw in the dream is there with me now." Then he says, "You're sitting here in your court, you got all these finery around you. Was any of this there in your dream?" He says, "No, none of this peace, none of this happiness was there in the dream." So he says, "What was there in both? You said that whatever you're seeing today is not there in your dream. Whatever you dreamt is not there now. So what was there in both? He says, I was there in both, right? So he says, that is you, and that is the truth, right? Neither this is true, nor that is true. The only truth is you, right? So that's kind of a very good story, which puts it in perspective in terms of what we're going to talk about. So I thought I'll start with that. Intuitively, you get a feeling for what we're talking about. The rest of it is really highlighting or putting a structure around that, right? So let's talk about three states. First state is waking state. Hopefully all of us are in that state now, that I haven't put any of you into the dreaming state. Uh, experience through the physical body, right? The waking state we experience through this body, uh, and we record all the experiences. That's what gives us the vasanas, etc. And this is called the Jagrata Avastha. And then you have the dreaming state. Dreaming state is the external world disappears. The waking world is not there anymore, but you create a physical a dream within your dream, right? There's a dream world. And you don't even identify with this body, you identify with a body in the dream. So this is a state in which your whole Stula Shariram is not there. It's only the Sukshma Shariram that is there. You are basically, everything that is in the dream is you. Everything that's created by you. The physical world disappears, the physical body disappears. This is called the Swapna Avastha. And then you have a deep sleep. If any of you wear Fitbit and you see your sleeping pattern, you'll see the REM sleep, the rapid eye movement, and then the deep sleep. And during deep sleep, you don't have any clue what's going on, right? It's only the involuntary actions that's going on. That's your heartbeats, your digestion, your liver doing whatever it does, etc. There is no identification with anything. Your physical body, your ego, your role. Are you a father or a mother? You're a boss, a student. You're suffering from ill health. Nothing is there for you in this. You're in total blankness, right? This is called Shushupti Avastha, right? So the three avasthas: Jagrata Avastha, Swapna Avastha, and Shushupti Avastha. And this is what we all experience on a daily basis, right? And when we wake up, we say, I slept like a log, which means that although it was deep sleep and total blankness, there was an I which was there even during that blankness. So there is an I during waking state, there is an I during dream state, and there is an I during deep sleep state. And each of that has a different world in which it exists. Last one, of course, is blank. There is no world. So if you look at it, there is a state which is waking, dreaming, and sleeping. There is a knower, which we can call a waker, dreamer, and sleeper. And there is a known, which is waking world, dreaming world, and blankness. Right? And obviously, each of these has its own terminology. We talked about Jagrata Avastha. Waker is called the Vishwa, and the waking world is called Jagrat Prapancha. Prapancha because it's again made from 5 elements. The dreaming is Swapna Avastha, Taijasa, and Swapna Prapancha. And sleeping is Sushupti and Prajna. And it's not a world, but it's a Ajnana Anubhava, that is an experience of ignorance, right? So that's all we have. So what they're saying is, we talked about it when we started Jnana Yoga, right? That we said there is an ignorance of who we are, and that is what we are trying to remove by the knowledge. So there is something called the fourth, that is the Turiya. Turiya simply means fourth. Okay, this is actually equivalent to this is your Atman. That's the one which is appearing as your waking, dreaming, and sleeping states, right? And each of these states, we are in a state of ignorance, and ignorance causes an error. And the error is what we see as the waking world, the dreaming world, And of course, when you're sleeping, when you're having a deep sleep, you have no error, you have only ignorance. That's why it's called Jnana Anubhava, right? Because it's blank. There's nothing. There is nothing for you to see. The consciousness is not lighting up anything, and therefore it's a blank. Now, this concept is very easy to understand if you go back to our substance and name and form, right? So if you take Turiya as gold, and if you take bangle as waking state, ring as dreaming state, necklace as sleeping state, right? Without the gold, there is no bangle, there is no ring, there is no necklace, right? So gold is not a fourth thing other than bangle, ring, and necklace. It is the thing which makes the bangle, which makes the ring, which makes the necklace, right? So that is really how we should understand the three states of experience that we go through. So this Turiya is what we call as Atma, and we'll learn about that a little bit more. So the whole idea of the known to unknown, if you look at it, that's really what this is an experience. The waking, dreaming, and deep sleep state is something we go through on a daily basis. Whatever state of tension you may have, whatever may be troubling you, when you're in deep sleep, you have nothing. You are totally blank, right? And the blankness is the same, whether it is for you or whether it's for me, whether it is for the prime minister, whether it's for the poorest person. The blankness is the same, and that is an experience that all of us go through. So from this experience, we are trying to kind of figure out what that fourth is, right? So that's really what this is about. And we, as a summary, we saw Shariratriyam, which is Stula Shariram, Sukshma Shariram, and Karna Shariram, and Avastatrayam, which is Jagrata Avastha, Swapna Avastha, and Susupti Avastha, right? In the next session, we will peel a few more layers, and we are getting closer and closer to Atma, right? Hopefully we'll get there. So that's all I had. I know I went a bit fast, so let me spend the next 10, 15 minutes, with any questions, discussions, anything that...
I honestly felt that, this was a brilliant piece of explanation. And I think I got everything, almost 90% of what you said today.
Okay, thank you.
I was almost being proactive, right? So I almost thought in my mind, the next avastha is going to be Nidra avastha. I was just wrong. You called it avastha, right? But perfect, brilliant explanation.
Thank you.
Great, another great one. It's so thought-provoking.
That explanation of Turiya was really, really good.
Turiya was
a lot
good.
of sense. Yeah.
Okay, good. I mean, that's the thing. If we go from something that we know so well to something that is slightly unknown, it becomes easier to understand.
So two things. I mean, one is it's very interesting that the whole idea of almost black hole singularity has been in Vedanta before it was figured out.
Yes.
Right. I mean, that's a very interesting point. Right. And the other one was, this one was a little bit different, and I didn't quite get, was the Stula Shariram, Sukshma Shariram. Karna Shariram is the one. So I understand Stula Shariram is the physics of the body. That's the way I look at it. The Sukshma Shariram is the not the physics, but the actual quality of hearing, quality of doing something.
The function.
The function. The Karna Shariram that one had me going around.
Yeah.
I did not.
So Karna Shariram is like, so if you assume that matter can never be created nor destroyed, and that's the principle, everything that exists today must have existed in its potential form in some way. Right? So if you have a tree today, there was a plant and somewhere. So if you have a body today, that potentiality of that body should have existed as a
It's
seed.
a singularity.
It is a
It's
singularity.
the singularity of that quality.
Correct, and that is why it's nirvika. You can't distinguish from one body to the other. It's all in one potential form, and it comes out as
Does that relate to Atma in any way?
Does that relate? These are all anatma, right? This is not atma. That's why we're peeling layers to see, is it atma? Is it atma? No, it's not. It's still not atma. It's all still anatma. This is all mithya. That means everything, all of this, sukshma shariram, karana shariram, stula shariram, all of this cannot exist if there is no atma.
But
So
it is
if,
not, yeah.
Going back to satyam and mithya, all of this is mithya, and we will come to that, right? So the whole idea is we're peeling layer by layer in search of atma. And are we going to find it? Are we going to find it? Let's see. We'll peel some more layers and see.
so the Turiya is the same as, or somewhat related to the potential, the singularity
No,
as well?
Turiya is your atma. Turiya is your atma, right?
Turiya is, okay.
So it is basically, if you look at the state of experience, like waking state, it is enlivened by the atma. Atma is the one that is giving you that ability to experience wakingness, experience sleep, and experience dream. So just, I mean, that example of gold and necklace and ring and bangle is a good explanation. So it's your waking state is a name and form. It's not the substance. The substance is Turiya. That's your Atma, right? Without
And
that,
can we say then that Turiya is the medium through which we experience?
Turiya is the experiencer.
Experiencer, okay. Okay. Trying to understand, we'll see.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, but the
experienced, it is the experiencer. Right? It's not an object.
so I still haven't. You probably will cover it later, but do you have multiple experiencers, or is it still one?
Yeah. So it is a good question. We'll come to that.
Yeah.
But to give you the answer, there is only one experience. Okay. Any other? So any other question? Pam, did I cover the Titiksha okay for you?
Oh, yes, yes, that's good. I mean, you gave a good perspective. So definitely it will come to mind, I think, when that second arrow strikes, whenever it does. Yeah, it was good. Thank you.
Thank you.
In fact, it was, it's good that Pam asked it. It was everybody's question, actually. And the way you have presented it, I mean, it's so much of clarity. I mean, I sometimes listen to Sadhguru and he says your life is like a pop-up. And that's short. And never able to, properly understand. And today, I mean, with this chart, it came so clear in why concept is such short and you should live it happily. Very, very nice explanation, and especially the bigness.
Uncle, I have a kind of nerdy sort of question.
Yeah.
So, okay, so looking at the Sukshma Sharira, right? Generally, it seems like Vedanta, whenever they talk about the brain, they're looking at it as a more, like from a mind, ego, sort of cognitive, psychological point of view. But for example, when you talk about the 5 sense faculties, right? Like the ability to hear, ability to smell, with aging, both like the organ itself and the brain's capacity to be sharp in like detecting sight, detecting sound, all of that goes. So I'm kind of wondering if did these guys think about the brain as more than just the mind? Did they kind of look at it as, okay, this is what integrates all the physical stuff coming in?
Yeah. So I really don't know if they thought about the brain as the center of everything. they always thought about consciousness as empowering everything. Everything else is a gross body, which is providing some function, right? So I'm not sure that there was a they obviously think that brain has multiple functions, like your mind, intellect, ego. Each of those were listed out rather than saying this. So they did not do a one-to-one correspondence between an organ and a feature, organ and a quality. They didn't do that, right? So they said, yes, these are all physical things that you have, which is there. But then the ability to hear is what is making you hear. Yeah, you need some instruments to do it. That's why when you become a Sukshma Shariram, you are not able to communicate because there's no output or input devices for you, right? You have the functions, but you don't have the devices. Both have to come together for you to be able to communicate.
So it's a different conceptual way of looking at it.
Correct. There's one more concept which we'll do in the next session, right? Which is the Osha Panchakam. That is 5 sheets of 5 layers of your body. So we'll open one by one in search of Atma. So that's the Panchakoshakam, which is a different perspective. It maps back to the Shariratrayam, the 3 bodies that we talked about, but they break it down in a different way. It's a slicing and dicing in a different way to look at it. And then we'll see whether that yields Atma.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you, everyone. There are no more questions.
Thank you.
Brilliant, Sri. Thank you.
Thank
Thanks
you,
very
Sri.
much. Have a
Thank
good
you. Thank you, Sri.
Thank you very much, Shri.
Thanks, Sri.
Bye.
Thank you, Sri.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.